Hey guys, today is another conversation about minimalism, and I have 6 points to discuss. I've been kind of thinking about this topic for a little bit because I've been really feeling like minimalism can be misunderstood online a lot, partially because obviously it's such a diverse movement and people misunderstand what it is really all about. And there's not really even a good definition of what it's about. So maybe they're not misunderstanding. Maybe that is their interpretation of the fact. But I here compiled 6 misconceptions about minimalism, and I will address them one by one. Number 1, there's only one way to be minimalist. No, of course not. There's not the minimalist lifestyle. There is a ton of different ways that minimalism can help you depending on what your goals are, depending on your lifestyle, your personality, your finances. A variety of different factors come together really to define what minimalism can do for you, specifically for you. And I have a video about different types of minimalists online. I'll link it down below. It's a very, very diverse topic. Like, you can't really lump all professionals into one group and say, professionals look like this. It's not true. There's not really one way a professional will behave or look or live like, and the same with minimalists. There are a variety of different ways you can be a minimalist, and to really try to lump people together or deny them being a minimalist for the reason that you don't think this is what they're supposed to look like, well, that's silly. Moving on. Number 2, you have to own a certain amount of items. Of course, that's crazy. It cannot in itself be a goal to go down to a certain number of items in your possession. Usually it's like, to do what? You're doing this to do what? What's your actual goal? Because that's a silly goal to have. You know, it's I'm wearing down my shoes just to wear down my shoes. But where are you going? Where are you trying to get to? Why are you doing this? None of these questions matter. I'm just focusing on wearing down my shoes. You know, this is what I'm talking about. And like this obsession about number of items you own, usually, and I don't want to stereotype, and there's a whole bunch of different people within that sort of mindset online, especially on YouTube. But I'm going to go ahead and jump to that generalization, which might not be entirely fair, but in general, in the overall scheme of things, it tends to be young white males who are trying to find themselves in this world who tend to fall into this particular pitfall of sort of being quite obsessive about the number of items they own, because perhaps they're not really clear on what kind of goal they're trying to achieve, so they just pick like an achievable number goal and just go for that and hope that that gets them somewhere. But to dwindle your possessions down to a certain number of items cannot possibly be an actual logical goal for somebody. Say, if your goal is to travel with a backpack and you want to fit everything you need to own into a backpack, your goal is to travel, and therefore you're reducing the number of items to do that. But if your goal is just solely to reduce the amount of possessions to a certain number, that's obviously obsessive and a sign of a certain type of personality. Maybe experimental, maybe you're doing it for fun, whatever. But it isn't really in itself having anything to do with minimalist. It's like ice bucket challenge. I'm going to do this just to do this. At this point, that's what it's become. It's like one of those online challenges. At this point, like, you do this to do it and not really for any particular reason, which isn't in itself wrong, but has nothing to do with minimalism. Minimalism is about something entirely different. It's about your mindset, the prism through which you view the world, the lens through which you focus in on what you want as a person and your goals. Doesn't have to do with the number of items you own. The number of items can be only reflects where you're going with your life. That's all it does. That's all that's happening with the number of items. Number 3, minimalism has to go with certain things like veganism, yoga, traveling the world with a backpack, reducing waste, zero waste, etc. Like, no, those movements are quite separate from minimalism itself. Minimalism itself is simply a tool to help you develop a healthy relationship with your environment and healthy relationship with yourself in order to focus in on the goals that you have as a person. That looks different for everybody because we have different priorities and we have different goals, all of us. But, you know, yes, of course, just like, say, a person who's likely to be into sustainable clothing is also probably into reducing their waste or plastic or whatever, or ecological footprint. Like those things do make sense to go together, but those are separate things. Like minimalism is separate from veganism. Sometimes they meet in the same person, that's okay. Minimalism is very separate from being zero waste, although oftentimes they go together, because minimalism is about having only what you need and not having what you don't need. So, you know, sometimes it goes with certain sort of subcategories of or subcultures, so to say. See, I'm not saying that veganism is a culture. It's not really a culture. It's a dietary choice, and it often comes with other things. But you know, these things combine with minimalism. But minimalism by itself does not mean that you need to do yoga, or does not mean that you have to you know, have a certain number of items, or that you have to have a certain decor in your house. Like, it doesn't mean any of those things. It's an entity of its own, and then there are other things that kind of compile what it is that it looks like to you as a person, and it's different for everybody, like I said previously. Number 4, you need to abide by a certain aesthetic and possibly live in an American Psycho-like apartment. No, no. Minimalism aesthetic, as I had mentioned previously, what we see on Instagram and Pinterest, you know, the very clinical, white, very bare bones sort of environments. I like the bare bones environments. I don't think with a child, it's easy to sustain the all white decor, white and black thing. Like, I think that's very impractical. I mean, it looks very pretty until somebody actually walks into that room and starts living in it, and then it's not so great. Unless you're, of course, you know, a single person who's very, very careful about cleaning and who lives by themselves without any family or visitors, because otherwise it's very difficult to maintain, unless you want to dedicate a good chunk of your life to maintaining your environment in a very pristine, clinical way. Then obviously go for it. But most of us have other things to do in our lives. So our homes don't look like the American Psycho apartment. And when I'm thinking about minimalism and that sort of a look, kind of my mind goes there. Like I said, I enjoy it in pictures, but I don't see how that would be very practical, to be honest. Moving on. Minimalism and organization are the same thing. That's not my number 5. It's not true, obviously. Being organized does not mean that you're abiding by minimalism, and being minimal doesn't necessarily mean that you're entirely organized. However, most times it does, because you simply, when you're a minimalist, you tend to have very few items, and it's more difficult to make a mess out of fewer items in your possession, which is what I enjoy very much, because I tend to be on the messier side of, you know, human spectrum, and minimalism really makes me keep clean and organized much easier. However, being a minimalist does not mean you're organized, and being organized absolutely does not mean you're a minimalist. You can be an organized hoarder with a ton of various collectibles and little knickknacks and everything, and you dust them every day of your life, and they're perfectly displayed and organized, or put in boxes in alphabetical or color coordinated order or whatever. You can have a perfectly organized, crowded closet full of crap that you don't wear, but it can be totally organized. So being organized and being minimalist, although tend to go together naturally, not necessarily, though they do, and they're not at all the same thing. Number 6, last point. Minimalism is finite. No, there is not a goal that you need to reach and then you're a minimalist. Minimalism is a mindset. It's a frame that you put around your world to focus up better and see what it is that you need to do, what you need to do about your own internal environment, what you need to do about your external environment to simplify and focus on things that actually really matter. We were talking earlier about the people who really focus up on having a certain number of items. That's not a goal of minimalism. Minimalism is a tool. Like, for instance, a hammer cannot have a goal. Your final goal cannot be a hammer. It's just a tool for you to do whatever it is that you need to do, what you want to do with your time, what you want to do with your resources. Minimalism can help you with that, but it's not a goal. There's not a finite picture of what you're trying to achieve here, because minimalism is a tool that changes its application with how your life changes. It's meant to help you. It's not meant to constrict you, put you into a box and label you with a marker and that's what you're supposed to be. You're a minimalist. It's a tool that is supposed to help you, and it changes as your life changes. Minimalism can grow and morph with you as your goals change and your lifestyle is different than it was, say, in your 20s. Minimalism will look different for different ages, different life stages, different families. It's really quite an open concept. Like, there's not a finite goal towards which you're working here. It's a process. All of it is a goddamn process, guys. So that's our little talk about minimalism today. I hope it was fun for you to listen to, and please leave me your thoughts below. Are you agreeing? Are you disagreeing? Do you have something to add to what I've said? Are there any points that I'm sort of glazed over and didn't go into depth about, and whether there is or there isn't anything specific you want to discuss further? I have a few cool ideas, some controversial topics to discuss in the near future, but let me know if there's anything specific you're interested in. That's it for today. See you guys later. Have a good day. Bye-bye.